Welcome to the Lair, a place where interesting people you may know tell you things you didn't. So grab a chair and your favorite vice and get comfortable. There are no rules in the Lair, but there is Laura Babcock. You know her from TV, and she is not into media monogamy. Let's find out who else is in the Lair.
Said that we're here in the Lair with Marie Bountrogianni, and you may know her. We've got listeners from outside of the Hamilton area, but certainly across Ontario. As a former cabinet minister, people would know you as well. Psychologist, a woman who has had her first real holiday unconnected to a technical device in 22 years, and
So that's freedom.
That's freedom. That's freedom.
Yes, yeah.
Price of success. But you've got the job offers lined up. You're never going to be unemployed as long as you feel like working, based on the success that you've had. And is it a nice position to be in, to sit back and consider offers without any kind of pressure?
It is, and I'm actually surprised at how great I feel, because I've lost an election, and I'm sort of not used to that.
Right.
But I was prepared for it, and I think being a psychologist helps.
Yeah.
Right.
So how did you deal with that? Because from somebody who's known you socially through business over the years a little bit, you seemed to be carrying the weight of the dismal national performance of your candidate, Michael Ignatieff. You actually, to me, you came into the race kind of with fighting words and you were ready to take the mountain back. But as the weeks progressed, you looked, to me, tired. So I was wondering how you psychologically were dealing with the fact that in spite of everything that you have done and that you represented, you were probably going to lose and came in third, which, you know, for an overachiever like you, that's probably never happened to you in your entire life.
No. Yeah. Well, you're a good psychologist, Laura. First of all, I don't really ever hide my thoughts or feelings, and never really try to. So let me backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, please.
I was asked by Paul Martin to run federally, and I said no, back then. I was a minister then. I said, why would I do that? Stéphane Dion asked me. I was still a minister. I said, why would I do that?
But I had Stéphane Dion.
Yeah. Well, and there was a couple of other reasons why I didn't want to run, but that's a moot point now. And then Mr. Ignatieff asked me a couple of years ago, and I said no. I had a great job at the ROM. You know, making more money than I ever thought I would make in my life, because it was a private board, and therefore, when I met my targets, I made a lot more.
Compensated in private sector.
And I made $50 million for the ROM during a recession, so I was well compensated, well appreciated, met the most successful business people in the country and beyond, and learned from them, and it was a great experience. And then Mr. Ignatieff asked me again, and I thought about it a lot. I thought, okay, I've got a year and a half left in my contract at the ROM. I know that they would want to renew it. If there's an election now, I could run. There won't be another one for 5 years. So if I want to try this federally, now's the time. And then I still said no, because I was enjoying my job, I was enjoying my family on the weekends, etc. And then when Mr. Ignatieff asked me a third time, I said, let me think about it, let me talk to my husband, and I wanted a poll done. So a poll was done, and I was a close second. So going into the election, I was a close second.
Behind Anderson?
No, behind Miss Charlton.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Because of her incumbency.
You know, and I'm going to give her credit. She's done good work. So that, I knew I had a chance. I always go into anything knowing that I could lose too.
Sure.
But
you were the star candidate. You were one of the ridings that was being watched, that was expected to go Liberal. I mean,
and this was before I announced.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying that the buzz was always that, and we said so publicly on our show. You don't drop a star candidate into a race like that who's worked that exact same area and not expect them to. Yeah. You know, we expected a close race.
It was very close, actually. And then we did our internal polling, and my husband has always been my pollster.
Yes.
He's a scientist by trade, so he always did it. He always predicted my wins and losses to the decimal point.
Wow.
And so about the midway in the campaign, I was slightly ahead. I'm going to be honest, it wasn't a big lead. It was within the standard deviation, which means anyone could have won.
But still, it's against incumbency, which is significant.
Right.
Yeah.
And he said to me, what he has said to me in the last other couple of elections, okay, you can win, you've got to work really hard.
Right.
So I did.
But if 10% of the vote matters with the local candidates' actions, and the other 90% is the air war happening at the federal level, there would seem to be a tipping point in the election. We were having this chat earlier in the Lair with Councillor Ferguson before we started your show. The debates was the chance for Ignatieff to let us see him as prime ministerial or not. And everyone would argue that Jack came out looking like the prime minister and waiting alternative to Harper, not Ignatieff.
Not only that, but and it was very disappointing. But Michael looked too nervous.
Terribly. He had one good moment where he said, Mr. Prime Minister, what you call an annoyance or whatever, petty squabbling is our democracy. And he seemed to embody everything that people dislike about the Conservative Party's treatment of Parliament. And then when the camera went to the wide shot, he looked down and looked nervous. And I thought, you just landed your single point of the debate. You can't even own that after the camera moved off him. Do you think that the Liberal Party suffers from a glory day syndrome where they're thinking that if they just find the right charismatic leader, they're going to take back their rightful place in the hearts and minds of Canadians?
Well, it's obvious that they lost their way in that respect. You can't just appoint a leader. You can't. And it turned out to be obvious. I really like Michael Ignatieff. I've been a literary fan of his since I was a young woman. I've read pretty well all of his books, way before politics. Right. In fact, the books I haven't read were the ones he wrote after politics. So I was a literary fan of his. When I met him, I liked him. He's a gentleman. He's sincere. But he's not political. If someone attacks you for a full year with negative ads and you don't defend yourself, you're not only going to pull yourself down, you're going to pull everybody down. So I got tired of defending him, and so did everyone else. He had to defend himself. He had to come up and say, what is so wrong with coming from Harvard? For God's sake.
Oh, and those commercials were so annoying.
If my son said to me, Mom, I've got a job, and I have to leave the country for 20 years, but it's going to be at Harvard, I'd say, go with my blessings.
Since when, exactly,
and
since
then
when
come
is Harvard
back,
a bad thing?
And then come back in 20 years and tell us what you've learned.
Right.
Why should that be a shame? Are we embarrassed because Gretzky was in L.A.? We love Gretzky. Wow. Why couldn't he say things like that? Because I know the reason. Harvard and Yale and other big American universities, probably at U of T to a certain extent, you're trained as a high-level professor to not do that. It's beneath you to do that.
So it's an elitist thing.
It is.
So you had the perfect storm, really, of kind of an arrogant or lazy position saying we have these different demographics sewn up, and you have a leader who comes across as elitist, even if he's not as an individual an elitist.
He's actually a wonderful man.
Comes across as an elitist. So you have that perfect storm happening, and all of the other things that we talked about locally going on.
But there's a reason for everything, and I think what I said on election night to my teary-eyed volunteers, who are wonderful, and I love them, they're wonderful. I said, democracy worked tonight. People didn't really want to give Harper their vote, but they had no choice, and they didn't want a minority government. But what did they choose as official opposition? The party that they knew would hold them accountable.
I agree.
Because they're the opposite.
Yeah.
So democracy worked tonight. Don't feel bad. Don't take it personally. We had a great campaign. Let's drink. And that was I truly felt that too.
We had the same conversation afterwards at the bar. Mike is our producer here after our election night coverage on Cable 14. And there were several people who had their head down in their beers, sad that the Liberals got trounced. Yeah. And my comment was, there's two factors at play. One, Obama had just assassinated Osama bin Laden, and that'll help him in the general election, so he may be around a Democratic president for a few more years.
I hope so.
But the other thing was the fact that, nobody is going to be a greater thorn in the side of the Harper government if you hate the Harper government than Jack Layton and the NDP. I mean, just take Hamilton's NDP. Can you imagine having Christopherson and Charlton and a few of the other notable NDP across from you every day in question period?
Oh, absolutely. And
as he was as a Toronto City Councillor too.
Yeah.
Nobody got anything past Jack. He was screaming and yelling. And
I've known Mr. Layton for many years, and I know his wife because when I was children's minister, I worked with her when she was city councillor for childcare for Toronto, and she came in all guns thinking that I would do something wrong against Toronto, and I said, "What do you want?" She said, "We don't want more spaces. We want more money for our teachers." I said, "You got it. I'm going to trust you." And she just sat back. That was my first meeting with Olivia Chow. So I have a great deal of respect and a great working relationship with them. And before Election Day, I said to Chris, I want
Well, if
to
there's
do pro
anything
bono. I want to help children.
Yeah.
I want to, can I use the microphone?
Use it.
Mental health is a huge issue in this country. There are more people than you know that are suffering from mental health problems. Because
45% according to a poll I read today.
at one
of
time in their
community
life.
workers
Think
and
about that.
managers. 45%.
Think about that.
More people in Hamilton came out today, killed themselves, I don't know if you saw the article, than die in traffic accidents. 1 per day almost in Hamilton was the stat that came out this morning.
We have a
above
few
the
sad
national
statistics in Hamilton,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And mental health is one. Now we're getting a lot of help from levels of government, but we need more. We need to take away the stigma. It's
Yeah.
I cannot. I've been affected by it personally from members in my family, with a lot of family support and a lot of resources. They're doing fine, but every day going through that crisis, I thought to myself, what do people do that don't have this? That don't have someone going to bat for them, that don't have someone forcing them to go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, that don't monitor their drugs, that don't talk to their employers and say, I know my so-and-so isn't at work today, but you know what, there's a good reason for it, trust me. Call me, don't pay them today. What happens to those people that don't have that
Don't have
advocacy?
The advocates, yeah, because the advocates get exhausted. I mean, it's a tough
It's
road.
and the stigma of not letting anyone know in case they say, oh, he or she's crazy.
Well, it's
You
true.
know?
There's a total
Yeah.
stigma. People don't understand, and I think they're afraid of it. And
You know what? There is mental illness undiagnosed in my known, but not clinically
Diagnosed,
diagnosed in
yes.
my family, and
Yeah.
the havoc that it's wreaked. It's gone on for generations.
Yes.
You know.
I think we're going to reach a point where it'll be okay. But it's going to take some time, and we're going to lose a lot of people. And why? Because a lot of those people are very bright and productive people, potentially. And what I say, to my patients, and I will have them soon, and to my relatives that have gone through this, why do you want to be normal? That's so freaking boring. You're exciting. You're wonderful. You're different. You're sexy. You're colorful. Be who you are. That is fabulous. What's normal anyway?
Exactly.
What is normal anyway? And so I'm on the Mental Health Commission, and I use every microphone I can to say we have to take the stigma away. It's not rocket science. We know what we need to do to help these people.
yeah.
And so let's just do it. And Hamilton, I'm afraid to say, has a large and disproportionate number of people that are suffering
We have the
because
resources.
of poverty.
Yeah.
And when I was chief psychologist of the school board, I knew this, and I was proud of it, but at the same time it was a challenge. People move to Hamilton because of our resources that have children that have those problems.
So I have to ask you this question, Maureen. It's a little bit unfair, but it's just you just opened a
Go for
door
it.
for me.
I've had 2.5 glasses of wine.
I got to go
Do
through it. You know what I'm going to do. You know what I'm going to do. You know what I'm going to do. Recently, I don't want to date the show too much because we'll air it in a little while, but recently we were doing our show on Cable 14, and Larry Deanne is the host, and he does a rant at the end of the show. And so he decided to do a rant on how a visitor of his was coming into Hamilton. They had a business meeting downtown, walked across James and James and King, and there's a population that inhabits downtown Hamilton, which he said, he didn't say anything, I didn't say anything, but I knew what he was thinking. And then he got into this, let me describe them to you. Long-haired, tattooed, gaping mouths, staring eyes, He talked about it and he said, with all the other efforts to revitalize the community, like the Arts Crawl, like the Lister, until we do something about these people, we're not going to be able to move forward. And the way it came across was elitist as a former mayor, and I'm a friend, and I've said this on my blog, think Larry was a good mayor and a good man. But the way that it came across it seemed as though these aren't buildings that need to be remodeled, they're torn down, these are people, and the reasons why they're like that is not because they want to groom themselves that way in some cases, it's because there's poverty issues, there's social services in the core, people are coming who have difficulties and challenges. So I wrote a blog about it because I was pretty shocked by it, and the response we've had through Twitter Larry has since written his argument on it. It's gone back and forth for a week now. How do you feel hearing that, knowing what you do from the perspective you do, both as somebody who's been a politician in Hamilton and both as somebody who understands the systemic issues that are leading to the depression and to, the other issues that are clearly going on with some of the people who are downtown in our core? I know you haven't seen his exact words or my exact words, so it's kind of unfair to ask you that. But, I'd love your take on it because it's been riling up the city for the last week.
Maybe it's because I'm a Mediterranean girl, And when you go to the Mediterranean, pretty well everything is tolerated. Homeless dogs, homeless cats, gypsies, babies at nightclubs at 3 in the morning. And I'm guilty of taking my kid at a nightclub late at night in Greece too, which I would never do here. It's not allowed here. Everything's allowed there.
Cool, I wouldn't move to Greece.
Yeah.
Get back out of
So-
the
You don't
nightclubs.
need a babysitter.
Maybe it's because I come from a culture where a lot is tolerated.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's because I'm a psychologist and feel passionate about
And this is why I'm
people with
asking
mental
you.
health.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those people that are on the streets are there because they don't trust the social services. They're offered a lot. It's not that they're not offered. They don't trust. They're sick people. So if we saw someone having a heart attack in the street, would we say, scumbag, he's going to make tourism decrease in Hamilton?
Right.
No.
Right.
So that is, I think with that kind of compassion we need to look at. You know, if you go up, and you have to be careful, but if you go up and start talking to people, you'd be surprised at how interesting they are. There are people within those skins, and they're interesting people, and they're beautiful people, and they're people that were born. They have moms and dads somewhere.
And they have every right to be on the sidewalk at noon that I have. And one of the comments was, you know, the suits were being overwhelmed and overpowered by these people. And
Yeah.
and that was my take, hence my gut reaction. People can accuse me of being an elitist, and I have my perks and my fancy vehicles and all that stuff. But it was hearing a mayor say that about some of his own
And I'm
people.
sure he meant well, because I love Larry.
Yeah,
But, and you know, and there are some people that would
agree with him.
Agree with him.
And his argument was after he had time to think about it. He said, you know, Laura, you can't handle the truth. But I think we all see that truth about Hamilton. It's just how it was positioned. So I put you on the spot unfairly, but I wanted to hear your take.
No, I
speaking
love
of mental
Larry,
health.
and I know where he's coming from, but you know what? People, we're all people. And when I see some kids and what they're going through and what they went through, they could have so easily have been on the street if it wasn't for a good mom or dad or a good psychologist or a good aunt. And I'm thinking they could have been. And so when I see a kid on the street, I think of my family members that could have been on the street if I wasn't there or if their mom or dad wasn't there. And I think, you know, I'm gonna take the time and talk to them. No, I'm not going to give them money because I know what they'll do with it. But if they want a bagel from Tim Hortons and I'm near at Tim Hortons or in Toronto, Starbucks, I'll get one for them, right?
Yeah.
And I've done that. And I don't mean to. I mean, I'm not running for anything. Why would I be saying that? That's the kind of compassion.
I have to ask you one more question, though, because I know we're getting.
Is that your next
desperately-
guest? Am I?
Yes. No,
They made me wait too.
Sandy Shaw has
Have
joined
another
us in
glass
the
of
Lair.
wine and you'll be the same.
On a very practical level, Marie, we never know what we're going to talk to any about when they come into the Lair. It's totally open, free-flowing conversation, hence the wine. But this morning, so we're down in King William. I won't give away our address because it's still a big secret. But we're on King William. And I walked out to get a Tim Hortons at the corner of the Wright House. And right here on the block, there was maybe 5 people, looked like they had somewhere to go, probably going to work or something. And this woman who was clearly, maybe I'm wrong to say this, looked like she was off her meds. Like having an absolute, I don't know what you call it, an episode. She was not just babbling and yelling and doing crazy stuff. She was going up to everybody she walked past and jumping right in their face as though she was going to physically attack them. And I watched person after person grab their chest like they're going to have a heart attack. And I remember standing there thinking, what do I do? Do I call the police on this poor woman? Is that the way to help her? Do I jump in if I see her attack somebody?
No.
Like,
Sadly, you need to call the police. Sadly.
Okay.
But you know what? That is not only what will protect the others,
right?
but it'll help her too.
Yeah.
Now that has to change too. But in the meantime, while we're changing that, and the Mental Health Commission, and God bless our Prime Minister, he gave us $50 million on the Mental Health Commission, and I was appointed by Tony Clement on that commission a few years ago, so I have to say that they're doing some things right. The Commission is going to be giving some recommendations in a couple of years. They're doing it right.
Great.
But until that happens, the only thing you can do really, unless you know this person,
Yeah.
and that is sort of the difference between a big place and a small Mediterranean village
Yeah.
where everyone knows everyone.
Right.
Call his brother and get the guy off my back.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. We don't even
I
know.
didn't want to jam her up because
Yeah.
I hadn't seen her do anything criminal. But I thought, like
They'll take care of her. The
Yeah.
police are really good. They're well trained now. They'll take care of her.
Well, Marie, I love talking to you. And we got talking about so much more than politics and recent history. You're passionate, obviously, about mental health. You're already making an impact, I would say, on that. And in every conversation we've had, you keep bringing it back to this gut love for Hamilton. So I'd be shocked if we don't see you take some of those Toronto jobs for a little while and then make your way back to the Hammer. I don't see how you can avoid it.
I have a mortgage to pay off. Other than that, two kids in university.
Well, we had Councillor Ferguson, and maybe you can do something about your tax write-offs. Thank you, Marie. You're delightful to talk to.
Thank
we
you,
loved it.
and thank you for the work that you do as well.
Oh,
Really.
you know what?
And thank you for the work that you do as well in the cable TV. And
See, she's still in politics.
No.
You can't let that go.
I told you, if ever
It's
you
ingrained.
want to do any kind of segment ever, a phone-in thing from parents who don't know what to do with their kids, this can be from a child that has severe mental health problems to a mother that says, they're killing each other, sibling rivalry, what do I do? And you want a psychologist to give free advice,
That's great.
please give me a call.
We will talk.
I will be happy to serve Hamilton in a volunteer capacity any way I can.
And this is why Marie Bountrogianni cannot be beat, as long as the stars align in her direction.
Except in the last federal election.
But that was an anomaly.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Marie.
Thank you very much.
you. That was
Thank
so
you
much
very
fun.
much. Thank you.
Chats in the Lair is a Power Group production. Visit us at powergroup.ca or laircast.com, or check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.